Right, US President Donald Trump is openly criticizing the UK government's Chagos Islands deal with Mauritius and describing the agreement reached by Keir Starmer as a big mistake. Now, of particular concern for the US president is the potential loss of a US-UK military base on Diego Garcia, which the UK is retaining through a 99-year lease of the island under the agreement reached with Mauritius. The UK government has since defended the deal following Mr. Trump's post, stating that the agreement reached to secure the joint UK-US military base on Diego Garcia is crucial to the security of the UK and its key allies and to keep the British people safe. President Trump's latest post on social media regarding the deal contradicts an earlier announcement made by US government officials showing support for the UK government agreement, but is consistent with its back-and-forth stance on the deal. Joining me now for more on this development is Executive Chairman, 16th Council UK, Dr. Brian Reuben. Good to have you join us, Dr. Reuben.
Thank you so much, Precious. Thank you for having me.
So President Trump's position on the issue has seen rapid U-turns in recent months. He first described the planned transfer as an act of great stupidity, and then he said the deal was the best the Prime Minister could make, and now he's changed it. But what do you think he's right on, that a deal can go on, or the deal, like he called it, is a stupid deal?
Well, thank you once again for having me, Precious. It's what we are seeing is not a confusion. It's or I rather cause strategic calibration. When President Trump first described the transfer of the Chagos Islands as a mistake, he was speaking from a maximalist security position. Do not alter the status of a critical military asset during a volatile global environment. When he later indicated that he understood the deal, that reflected recognition that the UK has structured the agreement to preserve long-term operational access to Diego Garcia. Now, with heightened tensions involving Iran, the rhetoric hardens again, because contingency planning sharpens priorities. So the right position depends on the lens you apply. If you are looking through a diplomatic and legal lens, the UK structural lease can work. If you are looking through a pure deterrence lens, you avoid even symbolic shifts in sovereignty when strategic assets are involved. So this is less a U-turn and more of a reflection of shifting threat perception. When risk rises, the language toughens.
And he also sort of talks about the tenuous nature of leases. How right is he on that, when you consider that the Hong Kong itself was supposed to be a lease between UK and the British government. Now we see how that went. It never fell through because of how China has clamped down on that particular island as well. What do you make of that comment on how leases work coming from President Trump? Dr. Brian, can you hear me?
Sorry, I didn't get that. If you could repeat, that will help me.
So I was trying to refer you to the comments on just the bad nature, if I use that word, of leases made by President Trump. And I referred to the lease between the UK and China on Hong Kong, and we know how that has fallen through as well. And I want to get your thought as well on a 99-year deal, a 99-year lease on the island, Chagos Island.
Okay, that's an important question. I think it's important to separate tone from strategy, because yes, President Trump's language, can sound confrontational, but his framing is almost always transactional and security-driven rather than sentimental or diplomatic. He views long leases and sovereignty arrangements through a power lens. So when people raise the comparison with the 99-year lease of the new territories in Hong Kong under the 1898 convention, which ultimately shaped the 1997 handover to China. The lesson many strategists draw is this: long leases can evolve into irreversible geopolitical shifts. What begins as administrative or technical can become strategic permanence. So when we hear concerns about a 99-year or 100-year lease structure in the Chagos Island arrangement, what critics are essentially, or what critics are rather saying, is this: history teaches us that time changes leverage. But there is, however, a key distinction. Hong Kong involved the transfer of sovereignty from one major power to another, and that's that rising power. In this other arrangement, the UK is transferring sovereignty to Mauritius while seeking to preserve, military assets for the US and the UK. Now, the real question is not the number of years on paper, whether it's 100 or 200. It is enforceability, all right? If access rights are legally entrenched, operationally guaranteed, and insulated from third-party influence, then the lease duration becomes less troublesome or alarming. But if these guarantees are politically fragile, then history, including Hong Kong, makes people nervous. So I would say this is less about bad nurtured comments and more about a worldview shaped by hard lessons from long-term strategic lenses in global history.
And just in general, what is the implication of this deal, considering that China is also expanding its navy around that region, and China has very good relations with Mauritius and is trying to also project power?
All right. The implication of this deal must not be analyzed in the context of Indian Ocean competition. The Chagos Islands sits at the crossroads of Middle East energy routes, East African shipping lanes, and Indo-Pacific sea corridors. At the center of that is the Diego Garcia, one of the most valuable logistics and surveillance hubs in the world. Now, the reality is that China has been steadily expanding its naval footprints across the Indian Ocean, from port investment to dual-use facilities. It already operates a military base in Djibouti and maintains strong commercial and diplomatic ties with Mauritius. So the concern in Washington and some parts of London is that Mauritius will suddenly hand over Diego to China, and that is highly unlikely under the current framework. Though the concern is longer term, whether sovereignty transition creates political leverage points that Beijing could exploit over time. Great power competition is about dramatic takeovers. It's about, it's not about dramatic takeovers, rather it's about incremental influence, financing, infrastructure, diplomatic alignment, even voting patterns and port access. So if China deepens its relationship with Mauritius while sovereignty rests there, Western planners will always factor in the possibility of future pressure on, base terms. And again, what I'm about to say that is critical. If the lease agreement is watertight, legally entrenched, and backed by binding security guarantees, then operational control remains effectively Western. So what is the implication then? The implication is simple. If managed firmly, all right, the deal changes optics, but not power. But if managed loosely, it introduces strategic vulnerability in a region where China is potentially expanding its reach. So in geopolitics, symbolism can be absolved, all right? Structural assets cannot be compromised.
Interesting point you made there, and I want to sort of take it further. We've seen Prime Minister Starmer sort of walk back a lot of decisions he's made recently, and the last one was the council elections in the UK. Do you think that he will take the risk of reversing this particular decision?
Do I think that he would do what?
Take the risk of reversing himself on this decision?
That's an important question. When we look at the recent UK political developments, including council elections and broader public sentiments, it's crucial to distinguish domestic political cycles from strategic security arrangements. First, on domestic politics, local or council elections results typically reflect voters' view on day-to-day issues. Right? It's about housing, it's about services, cost of living, pressures, rather than foreign policy minute like the ownership status of the Chagos Islands, Western access to vehicles. So.
All right, so I have a minute, and I wanted to ask you if you're concerned, because I was reading a comment from Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, where he said Keir Starmer risk alienating its most important ally, and that's the US. Do you think that President Trump is likely to intervene or interfere in this matter, considering how agitated he is?
Well, that's an interesting framing from Mr. Farage, but we need to be precise about what intervene or defend actually means. President Trump does not typically intervene out of sentiments, and if you watch, you would have noticed this as well. He doesn't intervene out of sentiments for an ally. He intervenes when he believes core American strategic interests are implicated. In this case, the core interest is not the UK government itself. It is uninterrupted access to Diego Garcia, within the Chagos Islands. If Trump concludes that the sovereignty transfer weakens American, operational setting, he will apply pressure publicly and forcefully. That could mean diplomatic leverage, that could mean public criticism, or behind the scenes negotiations to tighten security guarantees. But would he defend the UK politically? That's less likely. His approach to alliance is transactional. We've not that has
absolutely.
been
and clearly, the most important thing to him right now is the US base in Chagos Island. Thank you so much for your time, as always. Executive Chairman, 16th Council UK, Dr. Brian Reuben.
Thank you, Precious, for having me.